Welcome to the Roost News, the place for all things volunteer. I'm Susan DeCamp, team member for the Roost News. This podcast topic is Securing Our Future, a tri-state Social Security forum. I welcome the AARP Associate State Directors of Communications, Jess Kinser from Nebraska, Iowa-Alissa Brammer, Iowa, and Mary Michaels, South Dakota. They will share information on the forum, covering thoughts on protecting and saving Social Security for generations to come. Before we hear about these three state offices working collaboratively to talk about the important topic, I would like each of you to share a couple of statements about yourself, your position, and why you work for AARP.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jess Kinser. I'm with AARP Nebraska. I've been with the organization just over a year. I've been in communications and marketing for well over 20 years, but I love working for AARP because it's such an impactful organization. It does a lot of community engagement and really tries to give back to the communities that we serve. And just to be able to bring my skill set to such a renowned organization that's doing huge advocacy efforts and also really trying to support individuals 50 and older so that they can age in place.
Thank you, Jess. Alyssa, you want to go next?
Sure. Iowa-Alissa Brammer. I'm from the AARP Iowa office here in Des Moines, Iowa. I've been with AARP coming up on 3 years. And I would just sort of echo what Jess said. It's a wonderful organization to be a part of. We work in so many areas helping community members of all ages live their best lives, and it's really fun to be out in community making such a big difference.
Hello, I'm Mary Michaels, and I am in the South Dakota State office. I've been with our office about 2.5 years now, and I come from a background of healthcare marketing, health policy, public policy, political science. And the thing I love about AARP, it really allows me to bring all of those experiences together as we work for people 50 plus, not only in our state, but in our region and across the country. And I think the great thing is that we have the opportunity to impact people's lives every day, whether that's providing information on fraud prevention, supporting family caregivers, our veterans and military families, or even just having fun and bringing people together in social connection. And so I think it's just a great way to help people learn all the things that they can do to choose how they want to live as they age, and it's fun to be part of that.
Thanks to all three of you for those introductions. To the staff and volunteers listening, you may want to implement a forum with other neighboring states on Social Security or even another topic. Collaborations to provide information to the public follows AARP's mission to support the age 50 plus population. Let's begin our discussion on Securing Our Future, a tri-state Social Security forum. We continue to hear from the public that Social Security is a critical program, an essential form of income for many that helps them pay for living expenses. So on October 3rd, 2024, 3 states came together at the Stony Creek Hotel in Sioux City, Iowa, for this formative session on the future of Social Security. First, why did the 3 states decide it was important to have this collaboration?
Well, thanks, Suzanne. AARP as an organization, we really focus on being a wise friend and a fierce defender on financial security issues. And of course, that includes working to protect and strengthen Social Security for generations to come. We thought by collaborating, we could position each of our offices to sort of be a leading voice in this area in our respective states. By choosing the location, we were given an opportunity to bring the 3 states together, but also engage AARP members and community members that we might not necessarily always reach in the large urban areas that we work in our state. So we were excited to come together as where our 3 states meet to host this event and really dig into this topic. It's a complicated issue, it's an important issue, and these sort of tough conversations need to be happening so that we can position ourselves to strengthen this program so that it it's paying out its full amount for the people who've worked hard and paid into it through their working lives. So we were excited to all come together and lend our hand to put a great event together.
Thanks. Okay. As your state communications director, what was your role in this initiative?
Well, thank you, Susan. And first, just want to say thank you for your help as our volunteer state president with the state of Nebraska. And so you got to see all the work behind the curtain while all this was going on, but there was a lot of different pieces that all had to come together on the comms side. And the first was not only figuring out the location and when to hold the event and things, but determining the strategy for getting guests there and who was our target audience for that event. And then working with the local media in each of our states to get a joint live stream technology all kind of put together. And we also needed to develop the scripting for the panel moderator and the introductions from our executive directors and state directors, and work with teams to plan the various interactive activities and, when was lunch going to be, and, what kind of things were we going to have to entertain folks while, the early ones are there, while we're still waiting for other guests to arrive, and what are we going to do during the check-in process, who's working the check-in tables, what kind of, collateral and branding do we want to have on hand for them to see, any photo opportunities, and then really just how to, for those that couldn't be there in person, how are we going to drive them and tease about the live stream before the event actually occurred? And then since it was available on demand afterwards, how are we going to get people to watch it, the recording? So it was all about building the audience both in person and virtually, and being able to track a lot of those metrics.
Great, thank you, Jess. So was this advertised to the general public as well as AARP volunteers?
Yes, it was open to anyone.
Great, thanks so much. So how is share the program's format. It's my understanding that there were 2 guest speakers to share information and respond to questions along with a moderator. Could you tell us a little bit about the format?
Yep, thanks for the opportunity to talk about the event. So as Alyssa mentioned, Social Security is a really complex issue, and it's something that's going to take all sides working together to come up with a solution. And so knowing we wanted to focus on that bipartisan approach, and because AARP is a nonpartisan organization, we want to make sure that we're bringing all sides to the table for this kind of a conversation. So we wanted to have those different perspectives to really tell people like all the different layers and angles that you can come at when you're talking about Social Security. So to start with, we knew we wanted to have a moderated discussion so that there could be an opportunity for our speakers to kind of relay their perspectives, but also a facilitated conversation to get some questions answered and also to take some questions for the audience. So we wanted that moderator to be from outside AARP, kind of again as an independent voice. And so the University of South Dakota in Vermillion, South Dakota, is in close proximity to Sioux City. And so we reached out to the university, and we were pleased that Dr. Eric Jepson was able to be our moderator. He is the interim chair of the political science department there at USD, but he is also the director of the Farber Center for Civic Leadership. So he's working with students on so many of these different issues and how they can get involved as advocates and as citizens. So it was great to have him there. And other states have been having similar forums to this. Ours was unique because of the 3-state approach. But working with our national colleagues, we kind of had a stable of speakers that were kind of available to us. So the 2 speakers that we had come to Sioux City were Max Richtman, who's president and CEO of the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare, and Romina Boccia, who's the director of Budget and Policy with the CATO Institute. So both of these individuals are well known nationally and even world renowned for their expertise in different topics related to budgeting, financial security, Social Security, Medicare. They're frequent guests on national media outlets. They've written for publications. They've both testified on Capitol Hill and have been sought out for advice by members of Congress. So their perspectives are well known, they're credible. That sometimes they agree, sometimes they did not, and that all came out at the forum. But that's what we wanted, was that discussion that really brought all of those different perspectives into play.
Great, thank you so much. I thought I heard it mentioned that there were some other activities at the forum that the audience members and volunteers could participate in. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So in the state of Nebraska, we blocked a Plinko game similar to the ones you see on TV, where you drop the I guess coin, if you will, into the slot. But first they had to answer a quiz question about Social Security to test their current knowledge. And if people got the answer wrong, they still got to play Plinko and win a prize, but it really shocked them, where they're like, well, what is the answer? And so it really is that that dialogue piece that gets people thinking. So that's what we did from Nebraska.
In the South Dakota, in the South Dakota corner, we had a putting game, a golf game. So this is something that we had the opportunity to do at a golf tournament here in South Dakota this summer. And what we did was, again, when we were doing this at other events, they do have to answer the question about Social Security, but then they are randomly given either a full regular golf ball or one that has been shaved down by 20% approximately, to illustrate that if Congress doesn't act in the next 10 years, people could see a reduction in benefits by as much as 20%. So then they had to try to make that putt with either the full golf ball or that shaved down golf ball, as a way, again, just to illustrate how important those full benefits really are.
Thanks, Mary.
Yeah, over in the Iowa area, we had those poster boards that had some myths and facts on them, where people could place stickers based on what they thought the answer was. And it was so interesting to see the varied responses to some of these questions, which really highlighted the need for the education piece of this issue as well. And our speakers, took a peek at those poster boards too, and we're like, this is a good sort of conversation starter on a lot of these topics, because there was some nuance to the facts, but I think one of the examples was, do members of Congress pay into Social Security? And that answer alone, which is clearly a yes or no, had a lot of stickers put on both sides. So it was great for the speakers to take a peek at those and address some of that in their remarks. And people were able to walk away with a squeezy taco that said, let's talk about Social Security, a little stress reliever. So there were a lot of sort of fun, engaging activities in addition to the main speaking program.
Great, thank you. I have to say I attended as a volunteer, and it was a wonderful experience. But I do want to say that those 3 displays and games really added to the fun in the atmosphere. The speakers, that's a little more serious, but this provided some fun opportunities and some learning opportunities, so the people had an opportunity to learn more about the subject before the forum actually started. So the next question I have is, was there media coverage live at the event? And were there any AARP volunteers included in that?
There was. So in addition to the media that we had on site live streaming the event, and I should say that it live streamed in all 3 states. So we had a Sioux City TV station there on site providing the video services, and then they had linked up to a station in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and in Omaha, Nebraska. So that was really great that we had that media, and they also promoted the event. They hosted the recording of the forum for 30 days after the event, so they had custom web pages. But then we also had a second TV station from Sioux City and a radio station from the market come to cover the event. And obviously they spoke to our 2 panelists, but we did have one of our South Dakota State president was also interviewed. So it was great to get an audience member and a volunteer engaged in that conversation about why it was important to be there and why people need to pay attention and get involved in this issue.
Thanks, Mary. Yeah, there was a lot of coverage, and that was absolutely wonderful. So The next question I have is, you've talked about it a little bit earlier, but we all know that AARP is a nonpartisan organization and is urging Washington to find a bipartisan solution to protect Social Security. And the question was, what part did this play in the selection of the guest speakers? But I think you've already talked about that. So what I would like you to do is just please share some of the key points from their presentations.
So originally we did hope to have a Democrat and a Republican member of Congress, but yeah, with the tight political races ramping up and the proximity to election day and they're running for re-election, we had to pivot because they just couldn't fit it in their schedules. And so we found that these two panelists had actually interacted before in prior panels. And so they each kind of came prepared knowing what the other one's stance was on certain questions that the moderator would ask. And we noticed that they would also take notes on each other. So it ended up almost feeling a little bit more like a debate mixed with a panel, which was interesting, but it made it very fresh and engaging and got them interacting. And so a lot of them would say, well, I look at it in a different way, or I don't think that's fully true, or have you thought about this? And so it really was an interactive and engaging, but seeing how they had interacted before and knew what to expect from each other made it a little more interesting.
Yes, thanks, Jess. I do have to say it was very interesting. So the forum is over now. Do you feel that the program was a success? Were you able to achieve the goals intended for the event? Did you receive feedback from AARP volunteers and others who attended? And then what advice do you have for other states who might be looking at hosting a similar multi-state event, such as what worked well and what would you do differently?
I'll kick it off, and then I think I'm going to pass it over to Alyssa for some of the lessons learned. But we did feel like this was a successful event, even though we did have to pivot a couple times, like Alyssa, like Jess mentioned with the speakers. We even changed locations, and so there was a lot of crazy busyness that happened up to the event, and then also it's like you're concerned, like, are we going to fill the room? Like Alyssa mentioned, this was an area that none of our states really work with on a regular basis because we're just not able to be there in person that often. And so to really utilize all of our communications tools to reach people with a direct mail postcard to invite them, or with social media, or with emails, and knowing that we had a set capacity for the room, but we wanted to reach that broader audience with the media. So we were able to fill the room, which was great. So we were happy to see people from all 3 states come to the event in person. We had some reporting back from our TV partners, so we know that there were approximately 300 people that were viewing it live that day, watching the live stream, and we're kind of waiting for some of those other numbers to come in terms of how many people visited those web pages after the fact that maybe watched the recording, and lots of positive feedback. I mean, we had lots of questions that were coming in from the audience that we just didn't have time to get to. So we knew that the audience was engaged, they were learning. We could see, conversations happening at the table as one speaker or the other would make a point. There was kind of that whisper and ripple through the crowd or nods, or just kind of surprise, like maybe something they hadn't heard before. So just lots of thank yous when we were done with the event for those who were able to attend, and kind of appreciation that AARP is out there providing these kind of opportunities for people. But certainly there were some lessons learned too that Alyssa can talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Mary hit on a lot of the key points, but I think, if other states would be looking to put on an event like this, of course, you'd need to start planning really early. There were 3 states involved here, which meant a lot of hands to help make light work, but you need to be coordinated to do that. So a lot of planning conversations need to happen, and clear roles and responsibilities defined. I think we did a great job with that. Everyone has unique strengths that they can bring to putting an event like this on. And also, like Mary mentioned, like thinking outside the box a little bit, like the online streaming component to this particular event was so important because we were only going to get a certain number of people who could come in person to the room. So to make it worthwhile of our time and resources and our speakers, it was so important to think through that media piece for people either watching live or being able to watch the conversation after the fact. Of course, there's always logistics that run smoothly and less smoothly. So again, just planning a lot. In our case, there were transportation needs from the various states to get folks there to this sort of more rural area. So having a backup plan for how all that's going to come together is important. I would say some lessons learned probably are, as Mary and Jess mentioned, our two panelists have been on a lot of panels together in the past, so they're comfortable with one another, and they are sort of used to this back and forth. I don't know if I'd call it sparring, but sort of. So they were sort of off to the races immediately, and so it might have benefited the program to kind of go through it a little more tightly with them on the front end, so they knew exactly how much time that they should devote to their sort of introductions. It was a really substantive conversation, so I think it was great. But by the time they both sort of opened with their positions, it didn't leave a ton of time for the audience to ask their more nuanced questions. So, and we had good press interest in addition to the live stream. So doing interviews was something that some of the press there were interested in, which is awesome. So, we probably could have thought through that piece slightly more in terms of the setup of the room to make sure there was a quiet space for those interviews to happen. Just those sort of little things, but overall, just great to have all the interest and participants from everyone who was there.
Great, thanks, Alyssa. So as we bring closure, is there anything else that any of you would like to share? Something that maybe you forgot to mention earlier?
I would just say we couldn't have done this huge lift without all the volunteers and their support. They came from far and different states, and they know a lot. They're very knowledgeable, but they also were a welcoming face to help usher the crowd. They were almost like table captains, to help answer questions right at each table. Or if a person from the press showed up, they could direct them, directly over to one of us communications team members, and they know our names. And so it just built that camaraderie and that feeling of comfort, especially if this was someone's first time interacting with AARP at a community event. And so that was huge. And we recruited our volunteers through our executive council team, our advocacy team, our speakers bureau, and then our different CAT sites, which are kind of like key cities within each of our states where we hold regular meetings with our volunteers. So they were in the know, and just having that extra help and knowledgeable help was, priceless.
Great, thank you so much. Anyone else? Okay, well, thank you. Oh, sorry, Mary, did you want to speak?
Nope,
Okay.
that's good.
Okay, thank all three of you, Jess, Mary, and Alyssa, for providing us with this wonderful in-depth information on this great event. And as a volunteer who attended, I have to agree, it seemed very successful. And I just wanted to add, Nebraska took a bus there, and we had 21 of us on the bus. So we had great team building and conversations on the way to the event, which really brought something else for the volunteers. So I guess we're done. Thank you so much. And to our listeners, we encourage you to subscribe to our Roost News podcast channel on YouTube or listen to the audio version on your favorite platform. And of course, please invite your colleagues and friends to join us too. On behalf of our Roost News podcast team, we thank you.